Hi everyone, we're here at Rare Effect with Gene Kogan. Gene is one of our favorite artists here. Gene, you just dialed in from San Francisco or
No, no,
California. Where are you at?
no. I'm in Southern California, so about in the desert, kind of southeastern California. The nearest major city is like it's Palm Springs, and for those of you in Europe, it's like a few hours from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, pretty far from San Francisco. Well, like the whole size of Portugal, basically, away from San Francisco. No, probably twice the size of Portugal, I'd say.
Yeah, scales are a bit different there, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
imagine you could make it. I think this is also a bit of the power of digital arts, where the artist can create an experience at the distance. Um,
Yeah,
Maybe you want to give us a little bit of background on who you are and where you come from.
sure. So I'm Gene. I'm an artist. I have some sort of amateur background in computer science. I've been interested in machine learning for a long time, and got into AI through that, and just been kind of working at the intersection between those two things for a while. More recently, the last few years, I've been interested in applications to crypto, crypto and blockchains and how that intersects with AI. And so, yeah, that's been kind of like, you know, interesting me for a little while.
So you use machine learning and generative arts as an artist, right? You would consider yourself
Mhm.
being like more on the algorithmic side or more on the artistic side?
I guess all things considered, I'd probably say I'm more on the algorithmic side. I'm interested in processes and I'm interested in generative systems. And so maybe like the aesthetics is a semi-secondary consideration, although I'm also interested in aesthetics. And so yeah, maybe somewhere in between.
Right, that's really interesting, and we're at Rare Effect now, and you have like I think at least two installations there, and also an artwork.
Yep, yeah.
Can you tell a bit about all the things that you've been delivering to the project?
Yeah. So, well, it's my second rare effect. I guess the first one was a few months ago. So, yeah, this time we kind of scaled up the participation. And the first thing is just submitting an artwork to Rare Effect. I actually just submitted or just minted my first NFT on Foundation, and so I just kind of tried to time it so to get a little activity around it. I'm kind of really interested in NFTs, but I'm also kind of like interested in community and having events and like bringing people together. And so I try to like do something in the context of so that's what I really like about Rare Effect. It's like you have all these events going on right now in in Lisbon and in cyberspace and so on. And then the second thing is, or the second and third thing is we have two installations over there that unfortunately I can't see myself in person, but you guys have helped install. And the first one is this style transfer mirror, something I used to call a cubist mirror back when it was just sort of one style. And it's this installation that basically does a real-time style transfer on a webcam stream. And so, it basically acts as like a mirror that, redraws you in the style of some iconic artwork. And so that's on display there. And then the second thing is we made a new installation, something that I'm trying out for the first time, which we've called Oracle. And that's been a collaboration with a few of you at the festival, including Rivka Dette, and also like Elliot and Jesse have been helping out, and the other people at the Rare Effect team. Basically, that's kind of this. Well, the Oracle is this. It's something of an AI avatar that answers questions, profound and deep, meaningful questions. And you ask it a question on the website, something like, what's my day going to be like, or what is the meaning of life, or what is the future of crypto art, and then the Oracle will generate an answer for you, along with a video of the Oracle speaking it. and all of the images were produced by Rivka. And the idea of the Oracle is kind of like, well, so like on a technical level, it's using AI in the backend. It's using GPT-3, which is this language model that was released as a cloud service by OpenAI, which is a very advanced AI company, and then a few other sort of tools for generating videos, lip syncing, things like that. And yeah, it's just been kind of like, it's a little janky, it's kind of very it's definitely like an alpha prototype for us, but it's been working and entertaining people out here. So I'm kind of excited to maybe like build on it a little bit more following the festival, see where we can go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the visitors can also go to the rareeffect.io website, and there you will find the outcome of the oracles, which we actually publish on the Nevermind test network, which is meant to give generative artists some decentralization capabilities and self-publishing protocols. And we were really excited to learn alongside with you, like what is the needs for the artists in this platform and this protocol. Let's talk a little bit about what do you think generative arts. I feel like it really touches something very deeply rooted pride of a human, where humans want to be sovereign in creativity, but now we see that there is kind of like a mimicry happening in the technical side of things, where machines try to predict what aesthetics are, try to like bias the drawings into human acceptable things. Do you feel like there is a threat to creativity there, or is it more like you giving new tools to artists to play with?
I think it's more the second thing, so like, generative arts certainly, they don't replace or, are not an alternative to, for lack of better term, handmade arts or, even in digital arts, procedural algorithms, it has a sort of different purpose. Like I think for generative arts, at least for me, I'm interested in exploring processes. In the early days of generative arts, people were programming, trying to program simulations of things from nature, from biology, for biological systems, evolutionary systems. And so it's just kind of a window into, I think, something very different. And, so I really don't see it as the same thing as like a sort of, human creativity. Human creativity is a lot more about, or tends, I think, a lot to be a lot more often about sort of like the expression of that individual. And I think, generative arts, depending on what it's for, is it can be partially for that also. It's just a, so like in one case, generative arts might be also for the expressivity of the artist, but but for using different tools. So I look at so I don't know, I look at the processing and open frameworks and P5JS communities, and I think there's a lot more sort of expressivity in making generative artworks using that. And then when I do stuff with machine learning, I'm interested in kind of exploring AI and what's the meaning of AI, what is it, what are the applications of AI, and artworks can be kind of a vehicle for that. So yeah, I kind of, so yeah, it can be a tool in one sense, and then there's also something more intrinsic to the process itself that interests me as well.
Yeah, and because just a side mention here is that you also educate a lot of digital artists into this world of these new tools, and you have a ML4A and machine learning for artists. You also have a set of courses you gave at the New York University. So what I'm actually seeing here is that you have a strong narrative around what you want to do that creates the artist, which is you, which is in the intersection of both worlds, and you use these tools for expressing this new paradigm, right? Do you feel that the arts can become autonomous enough to create its own narrative and zeitgeist and become like a true decentralized or an autonomous artist that is not anymore sovereign to humans and like spins off by itself, but still can capture the same type of expressivity that a human would do?
Yeah, I think all those things are possible. And I'm, they're definitely they're challenging, and the challenge itself is meaningful. I think to actually, to me, it's really there's a lot of, well, so there's a lot in that question. Yeah, I've been teaching for a long time, and part of that is because I'm trying to kind of get other people to be as fascinated by these things as me. And yeah, in terms of the second part, like the question of, can sort of these systems be as creative as humans? I think that's kind of an open question, but I'm sort of optimistic about it. It feels to me like the technology continues to improve and to demonstrate kind of more faculties that that previously seemed to be only the domain of people, but are increasingly possible to generate compelling text, poetry. I've seen videos and images, and so if that's not creativity, then well, I guess we just have to talk about what creativity is. But I think those things are super interesting to me, and I think they have a lot of potential.
Yeah, maybe I'm hinting there more about like an art. Let's say an artist is a person that has a context in the world and maybe have suffered or experienced deep emotions and now wants to express that. I feel that kind of like journey through the world that creates the need for expression of an artist kind of like seems not so native to let's call it an autonomous agent or an artificial intelligence. So maybe, do you feel like that is something it can catch up on?
Well, it's like it's interesting. Like when people sort of anthropomorphize um, computers, then that tends to be kind of controversial, and I kind of understand why. It can be really hard to make direct analogies between AIs and humans. You ask like, what does a human desire, or what is a human sort of what is the purpose of the human's creativity? And so like it can be very clunky to make direct analogies. And so for me, like I often think that it's for me, it's easier to think of it as just a very different kind of creativity. So like the creativity of the AI is that, so what it's able to do maybe is that it's able to, well, what are all the things that computers can do that we can't? They're able to take in a lot of information about the world, observable information, and sort of hold it in hold it in mind, let's say, for a lot more of it for a lot longer, and a lot more, a lot with a lot more sort of fidelity than we can. And so to me, like the AI is maybe more of a vehicle for understanding sort of what's interesting about the observable world outside of us. And so like, the human expressivity is the domain of humans. And then, for machines, there's other things that they can do much better, and that we should focus on making them do the things that they do better, rather than trying to make them sort of, replace us.
Maybe one time they'll make a haiku about that faulty sector that's at that cloud where they used to run parts of their storage, etc. And that's the AI's problem. Like, hey, got some latency on my way between Mars and Earth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Now we are at rare effects. The word rare hints at that we are exploring blockchain decentralization, things like non-fungible tokens, NFTs. What we also really wanted to emphasize with rare effect is that, well, this is not just technology that you're going to find on a clunky marketplace, but we really want to make an experience around it. And a lot of people that come into the exhibition, when they see these interactive installations, the Stylemy or the Oracle, they start to understand like, oh, artificial intelligence is here. It is happening. It does something very powerful. And when I hear the word power, I also think about decentralization, and maybe you can tell me like, how do you feel like that power of artificial intelligence, how does that coalesce with this decentralization paradigm?
Yeah. So for me, like, well, there's a lot to unpack there. Like, we can talk about NFTs and crypto art, and we could talk about. I mean, I guess maybe just to start there, I'm super interested in these technologies, and I've been kind of, like looking at them for at least fascinated by them for the last 2 years, and kind of more starting to be relatively active in it in the last 2 years or so, 2, 3 years, and for me, like I've and part of this is machine learning is kind of it makes me think a lot about how, at least certainly in my work, when I generate an image, it's very much the kind of last step in the process that involves a lot of people. People that contributed data sets, people that contributed compute, people that contributed programming, and people that contributed, all sorts of things that had a tangible effect on the outcome of the work. And in the past, no one, in the past, it was the case that for digital artists, when we put our work on the internet, the questions of credit and ownership and compensation were sort of swept under the rug or abstracted away from us, because when you upload a piece of creative content to the World Wide Web, it's basically owned by the platforms, and in return, what we get is kind of this service where we get to use these services for free. And I think in the last few years, we've seen just the externalities and the negative side effects of this. Basically, it's the main business model of the internet. And to me, the promise of NFTs in particular, and especially NFT, not just like NFTs as they really are right now, which is still a relatively narrow use case, but NFTs kind of in a more general sense that I think we'll see in a few years, really flowering. I think NFTs allow creators and and I mean creators in a very general sense, like everyone who uploads a piece of content to the internet, whether it's a status update or an artwork, is that they can own that from the beginning. They have full provenance of that, and they can set the terms of they can set the terms for that piece of content. Maybe they feel that it should. Maybe it's something, it's kind of like with software. You put a license on that software. You say, some people say, I'm giving this software away. That's MIT license. Some people say, I want to be compensated for this software if somebody uses it. And I think we should be doing that for all sorts of, we should be doing it for media as well. So if this content that I'm uploading to the World Wide Web is used in the machine learning model, maybe I want something to do with it. Maybe I don't. It's just kind of like, I'd like to see that become a choice of the content creator. So I'm really interested in this idea of inverting the internet, where the platforms are just kind of a layer on top of the people who really build the internet, and the people who really build the internet are much more empowered to set the terms for the content that they create for it. And that's what I think NFTs in a more general sense do.
Yeah. We sometimes try to describe it as a form of tools for self-agency or self-publishment, and all the attribution and provenance that gets attached to it. Some of us also think becomes more like a social token. Think how maybe Beyonce is queen bee, has her beehive. Can artists create like a similar kind of community around their work, and enrich that connection with their fandom? Do you have any plans around this?
Around social tokens?
Yeah, like treating the sales of NFTs as an intimate connection between you and the collectors.
I definitely, in a general sense, I'm not I haven't looked so much into social tokens. I'm kind of curious about it, but I don't know so much about it. I am definitely interested in how, so NFTs now from the artist perspective, if you now open up this ownership model on the internet, you have this way of artists and creators, going directly to their fans. And there's all sorts of interesting and very promising business models around that. Business models that kind of, um, instead of something like streaming royalties, which feels like a very one size fits all kind of thing that mostly favors very big acts. Now you can have a variety of different kinds of economic models between creators and their fans and their supporters and their patrons to that might work better in one context. So if you're relatively unknown or you're doing more experimental work, it makes sense to the one economic model might fit better for experimental work than for more sort of established or very entertaining oriented work. And so it feels like there's this kind of new vocabulary building up, and a lot of it is very untested. And so that's another thing that interests me as an artist, is like there's a lot of creativity and experimenting with these untested kind of germinating models.
Yeah, you have all these value primitives that are like stackable and compoundable. Sometimes I try to describe it as like we gave the value brush to the artist. Now they can paint the value distribution and wealth accruement across their artworks. There's still a lot to learn there for artists as well, right? The toolkit is in its infancy, and not many people have played with it that much as you have. I
and,
also
and even I haven't played with it that much. It feels like all of us are new to it, because it's just how the thing only crossed mainstream in the last year. And so there's still a lot to learn.
let's say in a year 2030, how does this space evolve? Like we have Rare Effect 45 and Gene Kogan is dropping and then creating installs. So what are we looking at?
Yeah, I think in by 2030, if I often compare it to the internet. So in the early days of the internet, there was also a lot of excitement, and it was a very new technology, and so people were trying out new ideas, and most of the new ideas were just kind of taking legacy business models pre-internet and then putting a website on top of them. And then we've seen that in the last few years in crypto as well. First with ICOs. ICOs felt like the sort of like legacy business model of the internet plus a blockchain. And then NFTs is also most of what you see with NFTs, like art markets, especially high-end art markets, feels like it's just kind of taking something that exists, but then making it work in crypto, which I think is healthy. It's just a way of kind of getting familiar with it and everything. But I think we've yet to see like really mainstream crypto native ideas, and crypto native in the way that social media is internet native. Social media is not a legacy business model plus internet. It was a completely new thing that was enabled just by the internet. And I think what crypto enables is, this sort of creators economy without intermediaries, direct to fans. And a lot of that is, I think, still a little bit hindered by the high cost of NFTs. Obviously, like on Ethereum, it costs a lot to mint an NFT. And I think as you see the costs come down with second layers and side chains and other networks and everything, I think that's going to really, and also just giving people a chance to take it all in and develop new ideas. I think things are going to change a lot. I can imagine like one thing, for example, that I'd love to see in the future is that the same way that artists are maybe right now they're being paid for their NFTs. And NFT, of an artwork, you post an artwork, and people want to pay, be your patron and buy the artwork. But this can kind of generalize even down to really small things, like like just sharing memes, like the way that we create culture on the internet. People create culture on the internet, and memes, people create memes, and those memes proliferate through the internet, and right now it's just kind of all for giggles. But in the future, I think it's just it's like one of the ways that the internet works is kind of the gears of the internet, and that people, as silly as it sounds to a lot of people, like I think there should be a compensation model. I think like people should be, to the extent that they are providing information, that other people want. And and of course, like a meme is the sort of silly way of thinking of it, but really it's just content on the internet which other people find valuable, and that could be also very serious things. People writing influential blog posts, or writing things that are influential, making artworks. Also, of course, as always, like I think I can see this applying to a very wide variety of ways of producing culture. And by 2030, I think a lot of that is going to be a lot more prevalent, and more people are going to be involved in it.
Yeah, maybe there is some interesting blockchain native arts model, creative models that emerge. I can think of arts advertisement, but I also recall that we've been iterating a little bit, pitching back and forth on a project of yours, Abraham.ai,
Yeah.
which I think is very futuristic and has kind of like a fun factor to it, but also is kind of deep in the sense that sovereignty of humans is being kind of questioned about.
Yeah. So Abraham is this idea to create an autonomous artificial artist, and what I mean by that is in the most concrete sense, it's an artist. I think actually like with agency, I wish to demonstrate that this artist has agency, and it creates unique and original artworks autonomously. And it's kind of it's not exactly a new idea. I would say it has antecedents in both crypto and in AI, and it's kind of a prescriptive formula for achieving this. I would say the antecedents are in the world of AI arts. For people who have been working with AI, for creative purposes, for going back actually a couple of decades, the question of agency for these agents that they're building, computational agents that create images and sounds and sort of and a lot of cases like physical artworks. There's a question of like, what is the agency of this thing? And I've always been really fascinated by that. I think even when I was a kid, I used to, like when I was playing video games, like sports video games, I would usually just play the AIs against each other and watch them. That was sort of like, I've always been fascinated by that because it feels like it looks to me like a life form. And so, but the thing that's been missing for a long time in all of that is real mechanisms for true agency. And I think that's kind of where why the ArtDAO idea in particular really inspired me when I learned about it. And that's actually like, I would credit the ArtDAO idea as getting me into crypto to begin with, because for the most part, like I'd all but dismissed Bitcoin, at least in the early days, and then like kind of when I learned about Ethereum and ArtDAO idea, it felt to me like it sort of completed the idea of the AI artist. It gave me a wheels for this artist to truly demonstrate that it's separate from its creators. And so now it's still and so yeah, well, that's kind of like the ArtDAO idea, is that you can have a program that is is acting as autonomously as possible. Maybe it's kind of being steered by a lot of people. A DAO can be made up of people, but it sort of functions irrespectively of them, and it can function with an entirely different set of people. And the outcome of of this agent, whatever it's producing, is a function of all those people. So that's kind of the ArtDAO idea. And before that, AI arts, AI artists would usually be a program that was written by one person to sort of mimic their creativity. And in that sense, I kind of compare it to a ventriloquist, so like the ventriloquist has the dummy on their arm. And, the idea is that the dummy is like another human. But really, we all know that it's the ventriloquist who's making the dummy speak. And so and so that's what, like, for example, and I find projects like Aaron, for example, by Harold Cohen, was one of the first real sort of AI art projects. And but the limitation there is kind of that it really was sort of Harold Cohen. It was really Harold Cohen, and creating, making this program demonstrate creativity, but it was sort of teaching it his own creativity, let's say. And so the art DAO idea is a way of kind of like decentralizing that, right? Because if it's decentralized, that means that it doesn't inherit creativity from a single person or a single group of people, but or a small group of people, but maybe scaling to a large group of people, maybe as large as the whole planet, if possible. Um, and then it becomes unpredictable a little bit, and it has its own creativity. It has this hive mind. Yeah, there's a lot. We can get into the gears for Abraham, but it's a long talk.
It becomes a sum of its environment, and then basically is the more decentralized inputs it gets, the less controllable by a single entity it is. Hence, more autonomy enters into it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's, and I compare it kind of like it's like a choir is made of singers, and the choir has this voice. Everyone knows the voice of a choir, and it doesn't sound like any individual person. It just sounds like something on its own. And so we have some cultural, precedents for this. The idea of a hive mind or a collective intelligence as being separate from its components. And that's kind of the goal for Abraham, is to actually try to concretely make that, using machine learning, basically, because machine learning is also a mechanism that you can tie in, of course, a lot of data, a lot of different people, a lot of people contributing to it, and it becomes this kind of like, it almost becomes a window into there's something below everybody, something beneath it, something. Yeah, it's hard to express sometimes. It's a little bit like, I'm still struggling to yeah, it's a collective intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a collective intelligence with some fuzziness to it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I was in the earlier stages of autonomous and art DAO, so I've been thinking about autonomy there as well. But I think how you frame it now is a very interesting way, in order to at least get a taste of what's the buildable part here, and what kind of does it tell the humanity. And that's also what I find very interesting about the installations you do. It's very advanced technology, which is in the hands of a few. Obviously, OpenAI claims to like do this for the good, but Microsoft already captured much of that, I think. So showing the power of these tools by expressionism, I think is a very, and educating people through that narrative and that immersive experience is of utmost importance, I think, in order to like lower the asymmetry between the people that know how to use and utilize, and maybe use it in the ways that won't benefit the majority of people. So I feel there's a philanthropist aspect to your work. How do you feel about that yourself?
I never thought of it that way necessarily, but it certainly, if it's philanthropic, then I would consider that, a compliment. Like, and to me, like, it is very much, these systems are very collaborative and scalable, and so they can encompass a lot of people. And to me, there's something really beautiful about many people cooperating under some shared beliefs, under some shared goals. And so I'd like to, and so that's why projects in that attempt to catalyze that are interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that's also a very nice note to like round off the conversation. We're at the top of the hour. I think we could spend a few more nights
Yeah.
in the desert philosophizing about this. Do you have any like remaining remarks or things you want to give to the audience of Rare Effect?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like enjoy everything kind of, and think I guess like most generic sort of general thing I could say is like think about the technology in the long term. There's obviously a lot of sort of wild-eyed optimism and everything, and I'd like to see people think about the long term because the technology is still really new. And with respect to Abraham, it's something that I'm like trying to actively revisit now. Something that I put online 2 years ago, but then developed it for a little while, and then ran into some walls, technological walls. But now is something that I'm attempting to kind of reinvigorate, and maybe not even Abraham, but kind of like other art DAO projects also are fascinating me. So I'd like to see the art DAO kind of happen. And so yeah, that's kind of all.
Yeah, so we'll drop the link as well. It's abraham.ai.
Yep.
There's also ML4A, and then
Oh,
obviously,
that's yep. Yeah, and
and
ML4A is an educational resource. ML48, that's like letters and numbers. ML4A.net is an educational resource I've been developing for the last 5-6 years for basically machine learning for arts.
Gene, I must say you've been one of my biggest inspirations in the space. I'm very glad we met a few years in Berlin.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have a very nice journey together, exploring a lot of stuff from both worlds and the intersection that we have today. I really got a lot of like really nice responses. People just want to play with it, interact with it, and that's exactly what we want to see at Rare Effect. So kudos to you. I hope you have a fantastic day there, and you can come to Lisbon very soon, and we'll think about nice events we can put on that on there, giving more access to the local artists here to these amazing worlds that we are exploring here.
Yep.
So
yeah, likewise, it's been great, like great journey learning about the crypto space. I have you to thank for a lot of that as well. Going back, to meeting in Berlin. So for sure, it's like it's a journey.
it is a journey, and that's what we're here for, right? That's what I'll ask, why are we here at to the Oracle? A lot of other people, I noticed something like a lot of people ask similar questions.
Why are we here? Yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
here? What's the meaning of life? And then
It's kind of cool. The Oracle is because if you're talking to a machine, people let their guard down. Like when you speak to a human, you might not want to be so personal, but when you speak to a machine, it's like people will ask the most profound, like the most baseline questions that they can, like why are we here?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I guess a lot of people are now asking, why are we here in the metaverse? Where are we? Where are
Yeah,
we?
right. Yeah.
Okay. So Gene, have a great day.
Yeah.
We'll end the interview here. And it was great to see you.